Mr. X, 49-year-old male from Andaman, shift movement controller by application. Chief complaint of jaundice for 4 months and weight loss for last 3 months.
Yeah. Next slide.
He was apparently normal 4 months back when he noticed high color urine and later development of yellowish discoloration of eyes. He took scan initially, later he noticed reduction in yellowish discoloration, but jaundice increased after a week. He also noticed waxing and waning of the jaundice. He was treated with oral medication.
Anything that you would like to ask? There's a total duration of 4 months. Just go to the previous slide. Age of the patient is what? 42.
49.
49. Okay. 49-year-old male who's come with history of jaundice. Yeah.
Jaundice.
Yeah. What is your next slide? What is your interpretation of this presentation that he's made?
Looks like obstructive jaundice because of the worsening jaundice. Painless worsening jaundice, and some waxing and waning is there, and there's significant weight loss. So I would like to consider obstructive jaundice.
Doctor, just 1 second. Eh?
Yes, ma'am.
Just 1 second. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So what are the first things that you would like to ask in this patient? He was doing well until 4 months back, and then he's noticed yellow discoloration in the eyes and urine almost simultaneously. Yeah.
Any history of pain in the right hypochondrial diaphragm?
Okay.
Or any history of any abdominal pain?
So any patient who comes with jaundice, I think once you start with the history of jaundice and give the first statement that he was doing well and then he noticed yellow discoloration, I think what are the first few questions that you would like to ask before you proceed with the history of jaundice? What are the things that...
progressive jaundice, ma'am?
No, not the jaundice. So supposing I were to present, I'll say 49-year-old male has come with history of high-colored urine with yellow discoloration of eyes for 4 months. No, that's the main presentation. And then the first thing you say is antedating the presence of this jaundice. What are the things that you would like to know? Antedating this present presentation.
Any history of fever, prodrome, decreased appetite?
So number 1 would be prodromal symptoms. No? So one is symptoms, number 1. Number 2?
Any history of alcohol binge, ma'am?
Sorry?
Any history of alcohol intake with alcohol binge?
Alcohol intake, yes. Number 2. And number 3 would be?
Any history of complementary alternative medicine?
Alternative, yeah. So, yeah, these are the, yeah, so one is drugs. No? Certain drugs, like suppose he's on antituberculous drugs, more than CAM. So, suppose he's on, if the person was a female, then oral contraceptive. So, drug history, number 1. Number 2, prodromal symptoms is number 2. And number 3 is alcohol. So, antedating this present complaints, I think these are the... From the history of prodromal symptoms, can you give some information as to what type of jaundice it is? Etiology-wise, suppose the person has prodromal symptoms.
About 2 to 3 weeks earlier, the patient is having history of fever with fever with chills or history of malaise, vomiting.
Dr. Bhavin, your audio is not very clear, you know. There is some echoing coming up. So the thing is, in case, yeah, can you just send your audio?
Sorry. Hello, ma'am. Is it better now?
Oh, much better. Yeah, very clear, very good. Yeah, this is fine. So, so one is you mentioned correctly that you have to ask for prodromal symptoms antedating the present problem. Number 1, number 2 would be alcohol and certain drugs. So apparently the patient is doing well, and it is almost an insidious onset of jaundice. And I believe and presume that there's no history of any prodromal symptoms Patient is not consuming alcohol and has not been on any medication anticipating the present complaints. Once you get the history of jaundice, which is insidious in onset over a period of 4 months, what's the next thing that you would ask? The progressive nature of the jaundice, no?
Yes, ma'am.
How fast is it progressing? Is it slow progressive or is it rapidly progressive? So that is important.
Rapidly progressive.
So once you get that particular history, normally what I would always recommend is just draw a graph rather than taking a big detailed history. And once you draw the graph, then as you draw the graph is an upright and then it goes flat, and then either it remains constant at the end of 4 months, or then there is a fall and then it comes down. So the next thing what's the next thing that you should ask? Next immediate question that you would ask after you get the history of jaundice. 2 things that you would ask would be abdominal pain and fever.
Any pain, fever, weight loss and loss of appetite.
No, that all will be much later. The next question that you want to ask is abdominal pain and fever. Why do you want to ask these 2 questions?
To differentiate intrahepatic cholestasis versus extrahepatic cholestasis.
Yeah, so the thing is, if in case it is present, it helps you, but its absence does not exclude the possibility of extrahepatic biliary obstruction.
Exactly.
So
Yes,
once you get the history of jaundice, so a few things that you want to ask is, one is it is progressive in intensity, and then you can describe further down what are the other 2-3 things that you would ask for jaundice itself before you go to the abdominal pain and fever.
History of pruritus, I will ask, ma'am. History of clay color stool.
Yeah, so we call it as, don't use the word clay color. Clay colored is actually, it's a China clay, no, which is a pale stool.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in day-to-day colloquial term, the clay that you're mentioning is actually the slate, the slate that we write in gray color, silvery gray. That is what is clay. But what you're referring to in actual term is China clay. China clay would be something like a bead, the one that you cover the wall.
Yes.
That's a color. So that is a pale stool. So instead of using the clay stool, use the word pale, P-A-L-E.
Pale color stool. Okay.
So the next thing that you would ask is, yes, the person has intense pruritus, disturbing his day-to-day work, and the presence of passage of pale stool.
Correct.
And since duration is 4 months, what are the other things that you would ask? Whether there is moment say the whole problem is here. The history just says there's waxing and waning of jaundice. So many other things are missing. Many things are missing in this history. So once you draw the graph, either it's a constant increase and it comes to the present state, or
onset, duration and progress of the jaundice.
Or there is. So when you say waxing and waning, what is that? What really waxes and wanes? What waxes and wanes? It's not actually the intensity of jaundice, it's the intensity of pruritus. So you get pruritus. So the first thing to tell you that there is a waxing and waning in the intensity of jaundice would be the regression of pruritus. So the first thing that happens, supposing you have an ampullary carcinoma or a growth in that region, and then you find there's undergoing necrosis, so the first thing that will happen is the pruritus will come down. The eyes continue to remain deep yellow. Okay, the eyes will continue to remain deep yellow.
Yes.
And once you get that history, and then, of course, then so when you say waxing and waning, it is, when all can you get waxing and waning in jaundice?
Ma'am, in cases of periampullary carcinoma, because of necrosis and sloughing out of the mass lesion causing decrease in the obstruction, ma'am.
Yeah.
Other than this, ma'am.
In case there's a stone disease, no?
Stone disease after passing off, ma'am.
Passage of stone. But then that will be just one time jaundice, and then the pain comes, and then the jaundice comes down. So it may not get a waxing and waning. And although we discuss so much about waxing and waning, seldom have we really seen this particular, because once the patient comes with jaundice, I mean almost 80 to 90% will all have an ultrasound within 2 weeks of the onset of jaundice.
Yes, ma'am.
In earlier days when we did not have ultrasound and all those sophisticated instruments, in those days, of course, the history was very important and we would get this waxing and waning. Otherwise, in today's practice, this particular history, we hardly ever get this because within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there will be a history of ultrasound that has been taken that would have shown whether the patient has got intrahepatic or extrahepatic. So here in this particular patient, there's also a history of CAM with the onset of jaundice. Here, very important, what are the things that will ask for history of CAM? The nature, like he said, homeopathy, no? So, so which are the ones that are deleterious to the liver? Siddha and Unani, no? Siddha and Unani. Yeah. Ayurvedic is somewhat better, homeopathy is also not too bad. But Siddha and Unani medicine, they cause even bone marrow suppression. And sometimes you get patients coming with aplastic anemia. It's not uncommon. We've seen quite often that particular problem. And the person can get toxic hepatitis in this particular situation. And therefore, keep that in mind that jaundice has started and the patient was started on alternative system of medicine, but the jaundice is increasing. And then there's some history to say that this patient will not notice waxing and waning of jaundice. What are the things that will change? So one is the patient will have decrease in pruritus. What's the next thing that will happen? What's the next symptom? One other symptom that will tell you there could be waxing and waning. You could have a melanic stool.
Melanic stool, black color stool.
Silvery colored stool, you know, that is alkaline, that is hematin, and with the stool, with the juice that is there in the duodenum, you can get what's called as a silvery stool. So that will again tell you that the patient is having a melanic stool, and that time you may find that the intestinal pruritus comes down. So these are the only two things that will tell you that it could be an ampullary carcinoma. If it is, or some necrotic pathology that is causing intermittent jaundice increases and then it comes down. Okay. So this particular history, notice waxing and waning of jaundice, usually would not get. And he was treated with oral medication. So what is your comment on that? Good evening, LBK. Thanks for joining.
Sorry, ma'am.
Can you, Bhargav, just go back to the previous slide, 1 minute, so LBK can just take it. LBK, we just started the discussion. Jaundice for 4 months.
I'm really sorry that the opening was quite good.
No problem. Nice of you to join. We'll try to finish off in 1 hour or so. Jaundice for 4 months, so we're just there. We've not taken the weight loss. So next slide.
Jaundice for 4 months, weight loss for 3 months. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the history that there's been a progressive increase in intensity of jaundice over a period of 4 months.
Here, apparently was normal 4 months back, and you noticed high colored urine, later noticed yellowish ones. Okay.
And there is no history of any prodromal symptoms, no alcohol consumption, no other alternatives, no other drug ingestion.
Was there any pruritus?
Yeah, that's what we were there. Next
Was
slide.
there any pruritus?
Next slide. I do not know whether the history is there. Yeah, there it is. Now you can read this here.
The patient developed generalized pruritus since a month, no diurnal variation, and was treated with oral medications. No history of pale or silvery stools. He also noticed significant weight loss of 8 to 10 kg over 3 months.
No, this one.
Murugesh? Yeah, go ahead.
We've not got a history of abdominal pain and fever. That is important, no? So, I mean,
yes,
you cannot be in a rush to finish off the history just with this pruritus and some waxing and waning, and then you go straight to the weight loss.
Yes.
The most important thing here will be an abdominal pain. History of abdominal pain. Somebody has had jaundice going on for 3 months with 8 to 10 kg weight loss. Okay?
Yes.
And he had reduced appetite and food intake. So apart from, Madam said there was no prodrome. And did he have any abdominal pain, fever and chills?
These two, I think the cases from Triple M, anyone can just give us that information?
Did he have any abdominal pain? What is the significance
Good
of
evening, ma'am. No, it's up. Am I audible?
You're audible, tell me.
No, chef, abdominal pain, ma'am.
What about fever?
There was no history. Supposing there was abdominal pain. Supposing, why is abdominal pain important?
Sir, abdominal pain will help us to
Describe the pain and tell what do you think in this patient. Here is a patient who has lost significant weight loss. He has come with jaundice, which is progressive. He has got anorexia. He has got weight loss. He's not able to take food. And he has got pruritus, right?
Yes, sir.
And even he doesn't say you need to ask for abdominal pain. But you,
Abdomen pain, yes, sir.
you describe the pain.
Uh,
Supposing he has
patient
got
can have
abdominal pain.
yes, sir.
So what do you think? What will ask for in
So
abdominal pain?
abdominal pain will help us, if it is a pancreatic malignancy.
No. You ask what is the type of pain? I'm asking history. In abdominal pain, what are the questions you'll ask the patient?
Okay. But the pain, type of pain, the character of pain, location of pain.
Yeah, that's okay. You ask.
Yes, sir. And then relation with meal, sir. Radiation of pain.
Just hang on to the same case, no? So what is that? When last you have abdominal pain, what is
So
it?
what will you ask this gentleman?
What will you ask? That's what we're asking you. What is it that you ask for the abdominal pain? Colicky pain, no? You want to
Is
know.
it a colicky pain?
Biliary pain.
Biliary, no, you have to describe the pain.
You don't ask him everything. You ask him whether he's got a colicky pain.
Colicky pain.
Is a pain in the right upper quadrant? Does he have a dull, bore, aching pain?
Yes, pain.
Does this pain radiate to the back? If there is a pain, does it get aggravated with food? Does it get relieved with vomiting? These are things which you need to ask this patient, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's the significance of that
So
pain?
even though the patient does not say there's no pain, you are being given a history. If you are sitting there, this is the question you will ask him. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Because the pain thing. Does he have pain with early satiety? Okay?
Why is it important, Dr. Bhavin, that particular distinct reference to Dr. LVK made? Early satiety,
Early satiety, anorexia,
vomiting and jaundice.
and pain, vomiting and pain after food. Where do you get?
And jaundice.
Pancreatic head carcinoma.
No, I'm asking about early satiety, severe anorexia,
Gastric outlet obstruction, sir.
carcinoma stomach.
Carcinoma stomach with gastric
Carcinoma
outlet
stomach
obstruction.
is a one malignancy which can come with severe anorexia and early satiety, CA stomach.
Early satiety.
Okay.
Jaundice.
Supposing he has got a dull, bore, aching pain, gets aggravated after food and radiating to the back. It could be a pancreatic malignancy.
Pancreatic malignancy.
Supposing this patient has got jaundice, he's got pain in the right upper quadrant, going on dull, aching pain. It could be
It could be
Cholangiocarcinoma.
gallbladder carcinoma, GB malignancy can come with pain, or HCC.
Cholangiocarcinoma, HCC, hepatocellular carcinoma.
Should come up with all these things. You should tell us all these things. Okay?
Dr. Bhavin, cholangiocarcinoma will present more as a discomfort, okay? It hardly
Discomfort, not as pain.
So when HCC goes on with dull aching pain, that's all these things we should know. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the fever. Whenever can you get fever in that context?
Fever.
Whenever can you get fever?
Bile duct obstruction causing cholangitis now.
Describe it properly. Bile duct obstruction, cholangitis.
Causing cholangitis or cholangitic
Cholangitis is common in malignant obstruction or benign obstruction?
benign obstruction, sir.
Benign obstruction. Okay. Can you get obstructive jaundice and fever? Where can you get?
Sorry, sir.
When you have obstructive jaundice and fever, and it's not a benign disease, where can you get?
Can you get a malignancy, periampulary?
Can you get fever and malignancy?
Fever with malignancy, lymphoma.
Yeah, correct. Lymphoma with a nodal obstruction, you can get fever. Second, HCC also can come with fever.
Come with fever.
Isn't it? Paranoia
And
possibility.
ampullary carcinoma.
And ampullary carcinoma. Somebody has smoke can get recurrent cholangitis, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And when it outgrows the blood supply, then you can get a recurrent cholangitis. Generally, malignancy do not come with cholangitis. Most commonly, it will be the benign. In malignancy, you will get cholangitis when there is instrumentation. But few things like this, when there is a nodal obstruction due to a lymphoma, HCC can come as a fever with a paraneoplastic, or as Madam said, periampullary can come with cholangitis.
Cholangitis.
Sir made a passing reference to instrumentation. Very, very important.
Yeah, and malignant pain, majority of the times you will get it after instrumentation. If it's a recurrent cholangitis, the first thing is you think of a benign disease. And what are the benign disease which can produce recurrent cholangitis?
Cholelithiasis, stricture.
Cholelithiasis, number one.
Cholelithiasis.
Number two.
Benign strictures.
Benign stricture, post-surgical.
Post-surgical strictures, yes, sir.
Strictures, number three.
Any worms can cause?
Ascariasis, no? Biliary ascariasis.
Ascariasis. Yes, sir.
Supposing an 8-year-old child comes with abdominal pain and cholangitis, 8-year-old child. Choledochal cyst.
Choledochal cyst.
If somebody has cholangitis and a large spleen.
Cholangitis and hemolytic anemia.
No. Okay, hemolytic anemia and cholelithiasis. Anything else?
EHPV, sir. Hepatic portal vein obstruction.
Correct, very good. Portal cavernoma-cholangiopathy due to an EHPV.
Yes, sir.
Portal cavernoma-cholangiopathy. We don't call it anymore as. We don't call it as portal biliopathy. The new entity, kindly go through the whole thing in the nasal. So these are the things which you should.
And hydatid rupturing into the
Hydatid rupture into the
biliary system. And primary sclerosing cholangitis. All these would present as fever and jaundice.
Fever and jaundice.
You got it?
HIV cholangiopathy. Cholangitis. Biliary cryptosporidiosis. Apart from a thing, in biliary cryptosporidiosis also you can get fever.
So it's a very, very important question, very important information.
Very important question in an obstructive jaundice.
Abdominal pain and fever.
All of us will ask you,
fever.
Right? And you should come out tuck like this.
Okay. So he has also.
So he has no abdominal pain and he has noticed significant weight loss of 8 to 10 kilos is reduced. Next.
No history of prior prodromal symptoms. No history of abdomen pain, vomiting, fever. No history of altered bowel habits. No history of melena, hematemesis. No history of blood transfusion, abdominal trauma.
Why do you think that question was asked? Abdominal trauma? Any reference? Can you just consider any possibility in blunt injury to the abdomen? You can get a laceration, you can get a hematoma, you can get a, maybe that's the reason.
You can get a bile duct injury and then you can get a stricture. Okay. What is, any more history is there?
I don't think so. Any other history, doctor?
Any other history you would ask this patient? He has come to you with a cholestatic jaundice. Going on for 4 months. You said prodromal symptoms, there's no abdominal pain, vomiting, there's a weight loss. He is 43-year-old person. Okay. Anything else? We have said everything. We never asked for a history of pedal edema and a progressive abdominal distension. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Because how do you know that it's not an intrahepatic cholestasis? Because there's no pain. No? There's no pain, there's no fever, no this one. So it's very difficult to say this is not an intrahepatic cholestasis.
Not an intrahepatic cholestasis.
Yeah, so is this any other thing which has gone? So has he developed? So this important thing, has he developed any signs of decompensation? Isn't it?
The only thing was intense pleuritis, that's all. Pleuritis was present.
Yes.
Pleuritis was present. That's the only thing that
right from the thing, yeah. And any clay colored stools?
No, sir.
Can obstructive jaundice develop pedal edema and ascites?
Hello.
Yeah. Can obstructive jaundice patient, say extrahepatic
Yes, sir.
infection, can they develop ascites and pedal edema?
Sir, involvement of portal vein, sir.
But when they involve portal vein thrombosis.
Yes, sir.
Number two,
Uh,
and
peritoneal
they,
metastasis, sir.
yeah, peritoneal metastasis, not
Metastasis.
very common with hepatocellular carcinoma. It can one thing it can produce ascites. Number three, can the liver develop secondary biliary cirrhosis?
Second. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Secondary biliary cirrhosis.
You can have it. Okay. All these patients, you can also develop ascites in these patients. Okay.
And yeah, there was a reference to whether it was part of a portal videopathy, but usually most of them is EHPVO. So, but if it is NCPF, progressing to cirrhosis,
Most of the portal biliopathy does not produce ascites. They come with
Ascites.
cholangitis, obstructive jaundice.
Yeah.
If EHPVO patient develops ascites, it could be due to a decompensation due to some other superimposed liver disease, or if the portal vein thrombosis gone to such an extent that there is a parenchymal extension in this one. And importantly, females with extrahepatic epilepsy can decompensate during pregnancy. Pregnancy.
Okay.
This is what we are
Okay.
thinking about. Okay? Once they develop a superimposed Hep B, Hep C, because previously most of the children, we used to give them a lot of blood transfusion. And they used to come with Hep B and Hep C when they were 18, 19 years, and then they used to superimpose Hep B, Hep C. If sometimes we no longer believe that NCPH, EHP was a benign disease, we feel that they can go in for a parenchymal extension basically. And the
Yes,
third
sir.
thing
Yes, sir.
is women with EHPO during pregnancy can decompensate. Transiently, they can decompensate. Okay?
Okay.
next slide. Marco, next slide. Yeah.
Past history, known case of diabetes on oral medication for 6 years, systemic hypertension on treatment for 4 years, hypertrophic non-obstructive cardiomyopathy for 3 years, details of medication not available, no history of abdominal surgeries in the past, personal history patient used to consume alcohol 120 grams per day for 20 to 25 years, stopped since last 4 months, mixed diet, normal sleep, good appetite, and normal bowel bladder habits, present history not personal.
I highlighted in the red to say that please don't bring sleep, good appetite, and normal bowel as personal history. Personal history is usually alcohol, smoking, and high risk behavior. That's all.
High
I
risk behavior.
highlighted those. This should not come in your personal history. Okay.
Okay, okay, ma'am.
So, do you think any of this diabetes, hypertension, outcome, any of these is responsible for his present complaints?
Yeah. And he has taken alcohol.
And he's also taken alcohol.
That's why I was asking you whether you should probably ask for any signs of decompensation is developed.
Decompensation.
Can alcohol present like with the cholestatic symptoms?
Presented with a cholestatic symptom. Sir.
Alcoholic liver disease, a cholestatic disease. Okay?
Alcoholic hepatitis.
Pardon?
Acute alcoholic hepatitis can present with.
See, you don't need to always get
significant
you.
food.
You don't think. How many percentage of patients present to you with alcoholic hepatitis in a patient in a spectrum of alcohol liver disease? Name the spectrum of alcohol liver disease completely.
What's the first stage?
What's the first stage?
I'll give you the start, fatty liver, move on.
Fatty liver. How many of them will develop fatty liver if you consume alcohol?
Percentage, I don't know.
Huh?
He's not
I
aware.
don't know, sir. Percentage-wise, I won't be able to tell, sir.
Dr. Ram?
100% will develop fatty liver.
Fatty liver.
So from there, well, you should know this, you know.
Yeah.
This is where I am telling you that means everybody does not develop alcoholic hepatitis. So from the fatty liver, how many can 20% can develop alcoholic hepatitis, 20 to 30% can develop severe alcoholic hepatitis, 30% can go on develop jaundice with cholestasis, 30% of people without going through cholestasis alcoholic can develop cirrhosis of liver. Okay?
Okay, sir.
So basically,
If you drink alcohol 80 grams per day for 10 to 15 years, only 15% of them develop alcohol liver disease. This is the first thing. 100% will develop fatty liver.
Fatty liver.
Then 20% of them go into severe alcoholic hepatitis. 30% of them can develop cirrhosis, and cirrhosis can present as a cholestasis. If you keep doing biopsies in these patients, you will know that this is not alcoholic hepatitis and in this thing. Okay. Like last week, we did biopsy on 4 patients. 2 were alcoholic hepatitis, 2 were, we were thinking alcoholic, but it was all cirrhosis with cholestasis. Then we didn't give them steroids, and these, both of them, the other 2 were received steroids. So 30% can go on to have a cirrhosis, and the cirrhotic people can have cholestasis. Once you develop cirrhosis, your chance of developing liver cell failure or decompensation per year is 7 to 10%. And your chance of developing HCC per year is 4 to 7%. This you should know.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
And in between fatty liver and alcoholic hepatitis, you have a steatohepatitis.
So you don't need to, from fatty liver, they can go into cirrhosis. You don't need to go into alcoholic hepatitis, anything. You don't need to get alcohol and develop cirrhosis. So the first time they were present is, they can present you with cirrhosis and jaundice. So in that such a situation, you should ask whether this patient has decompensated. You can explain the whole thing.
With decompensated chronic liver disease.
Alcoholic cirrhosis with probably a natural decompensation. And the commonest cause of ACLF in alcohol liver disease is
Alcohol binge, sir.
alcoholic hepatitis, correct. Alcoholic hepatitis. So they can all decompensate. So this is what happens. Okay.
So in between, you also have steatohepatitis between fatty liver and...
Yeah, he could have fatty liver, then both fatty liver and alcohol can become worsened. Or he can have, this thing he could have a superimposed Hep B and Hep C. Okay. So your whole extrahepatic obstruction here, in the absence of pain, can be shifted into an alcohol liver disease here. That's why all these is very important. Right?
Yes, sir.
The other mechanisms in an alcohol-related liver disease presenting with cholestasis could be they are predisposed to gallstone disease. So they can get that, they can get chronic pancreatitis, they can have biliary stricture.
Chronic pancreatitis.
Yeah, they can have a biliary stricture.
So they can have biliary stricture, they can have stone disease, and then HCC, all can present as cholestatic. So the alcohol history is very important. Don't get carried away with that waxing and waning in intensive jaundice. That's what I said,
Okay.
because that may be misleading to your diagnosis. Okay? Okay,
Yes,
next slide. Next slide. Okay, now summarize and tell what are we doing.
So, 49-year-old male known case of diabetes and hypertension, now presenting with significant cholestatic.
Do you think that HOCM could have had any effect and patients who are actually hypoxic liver injury and do you think any of the medications are important? Could it be any drug induced? Do you think it's important that HOCM?
Beta blockers are used.
Yeah, sometimes hypertensive drugs, alpha-methyl dopa, we've seen, that's one of the
Alpha-methyl
drugs.
dopa, yes, ma'am. Alpha-methyl dopa can be present.
Then in case of patient,
Amidaron can cause.
Amidaron is the other thing. So important. Drug history is very, very important in this patient. And just because the person who sent the details, he did not mention it, that's why I put a question query mark. I don't know, the triple M person, anyone is around? Was there any history?
What medications for diabetes? And all. Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, what medication? So we don't have the details. Okay, so now discuss the case. Tell what it is.
You summarize this, please.
Summarize.
49-year-old male, known case of diabetes mellitus and hypertension with obstructive cardiomyopathy, significant history of alcohol intake now presented with jaundice for 4 months and weight loss of 10 kg. Syndromic
Jaundice
diagnosis,
with cholestatic symptoms.
jaundice with cholestatic symptoms.
Process at the onset of jaundice. The cholestatic
4
symptoms
months.
like pruritus at the onset of jaundice. No prodromal symptoms. Then
Yes, sir.
Absence
No
of
problem.
abdominal pain.
absence of
In the absence
abdominal
of
pain.
pain, fever, no features of decompensated chronic liver disease,
So there's no decompensating features. That's all. Okay.
no decompensating features. I would
Weight loss.
see with severe anorexia and weight loss. Symptomatic
So
diagnosis.
most things are, he has got jaundice, he's got significant weight loss, he has got pruritus, he has no decompensating event like a bleed
Bleed, ascites, hepatic
or
encephalopathy.
progressive abdominal distension or encephalopathy, and he has got significant alcohol intake.
Alcohol intake.
So, tell me the differential diagnosis of this patient.
I would like to keep
What is the broad syndromic diagnosis? Broad syndromic diagnosis.
obstructive jaundice, ma'am, extrahepatic obstructive jaundice.
No, the broad syndromic would be cholestatic
He has
jaundice.
got a cholestatic jaundice.
That's cholestatic jaundice. That's a
He
broad
has got a cholestatic jaundice. Okay. He has got anorexia, weight loss, cholestatic jaundice, pruritus at the onset. He has got significant alcohol intake. So he's got cholestatic jaundice. You need to, and he has got no abdominal pain, no cholangitis, no prodrome. Right? Now, you tell me, how will you know? So he's got a cholestatic jaundice. So what is the next? What is the cholestatic jaundice due to? Is it extrahepatic biliary obstruction or is it an intrahepatic cholestasis?
There is some waxing gaining, sir. So, if we consider periampullary, we can consider extrahepatic.
That is not that. We just want to tell you whether it's an extrahepatic obstruction or intrahepatic cholestasis. That's
Just
all.
differentiate the two and then tell what's the possibility.
You give me the order of preference. Do you think the in order of preference is extrahepatic biliary obstruction or intrahepatic cholestasis?
Extrahepatic followed by intrahepatic, sir.
Why do you now have thought of extrahepatic more than intrahepatic in this patient?
Because of the history of waxing and waning of the jaundice, sir.
The onset, doctor, the onset is
Onset, no?
the onset is
The onset was with jaundice, pruritus, anorexia, and progressive weight loss. He has no prodromal, he has got also.
onset.
That is what it started. Despite 4 months, he never got into decompensation. If you think somebody has got alcohol liver disease, okay, he has been going on for 4 months, do you think he would not have decompensated?
No, sir. No.
Exactly.
No. He would have decompensated, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Nobody goes with alcohol liver disease, alcohol hepatitis without decompensating for 4 months, 5 months.
For
No.
4 months.
It never happens. Right?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
you have got to tell me the reason that if somebody has gone on for 4 months without, that's why I asked you whether there was a decompensating event or not. That was the important thing. That means, so probably I would rate because of, and alcohol is also a carcinogen, isn't it?
carcinogenic. Yes, sir.
So in that case, you would think that I have got possibly extrahepatic biliary obstruction is I would prefer to say that hepatic is more possible in this patient than an intrahepatic cholestasis. Number one. But still, I'll keep intrahepatic cholestasis in my mind, but extrahepatic. If it is extrahepatic biliary ulceration, give me an order of what are the probable. Is it malignant or benign? When it's
Malignant, sir.
You think it's malignant. Why do you think it's
Yes,
malignant?
sir. Significant weight loss, sir, and loss of appetite.
Anorexia, significant weight loss, pruritus. No evidence of cholangitis or abdominal
Cholangitis.
pain. So you think this is malignant.
Malignant, sir.
If it is malignant, give me the anatomical obstruction based on the symptoms. What are the most possible in this patient? There is no pain.
Periampullary carcinoma.
Yeah. One possibility is a periampullary carcinoma. Number two,
Carcinoma head of pancreas, 10 in
okay,
10,
carcinoma
20%
at the
patients.
pancreas. Yeah, you came without pain.
Yes, sir. 20% patients can present without pain.
Third,
Then cholangiocarcinoma, sir.
Hilar.
hilar cholangiocarcinoma. If you are in South
Hilar-
India,
hilar.
hilar cholangio. If you are somewhere in North India, carcinoma GB is more common, but
Gallbladder
carcinoma
carcinoma.
GB more often comes with a vague right upper quadrant pain.
Yes,
Then-
yes, sir.
Any other possibility?
You can have hilar cholangio. The second thing, you can also have a distal cholangio, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can have a distal
Cholangiocarcinoma and
cholangio. You
distal.
can have hilar cholangio.
And nodal of
Where all you get cholangio? Tell me, how do you classify cholangio?
Cholangiocarcinoma can be classified into intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma and extrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma.
Extrahepatic can be hilar, distal.
Hilar and distal, and intrahepatic is above the
Yeah. Intrahepatic cholangio can be single or multiple. Okay.
single or multiple. Yes, sir.
Right. So tell me, so one is hilar, distal you said, then anything else?
Distal carcinoma.
It can be nodes and the porta, no?
Yes,
Can be,
sir.
there can be a node in the porta.
Secondary.
Another
What
Secondary.
is the porta? Where are the possible source of primary?
Gastric carcinoma, sir.
Yeah.
Gastric carcinoma, then
HCC. HCC also can produce nodes.
HCC, pancreatic carcinoma, all three can present.
Pancreatic carcinoma, before it gets lymphadenopathy, you will develop jaundice. So patient will come to you much earlier.
Body, sir, body, pancreatic body carcinoma, sir.
Cambronic body carcinoma is very notorious to come with a dull, aching pain and anorexia. Okay, here there is no pain. So in this case, if there is no pain and if there are, we are coming with anorexia and all those things, as I said, there is a nodal obstruction. More commonly, you will think of carcinoma stomach.
Stomach and hepatocellular carcinoma.
Yeah, HCC.
Patient was on cardiac. Okay. Okay, then can it be intrahepatic?
Can it be just be intrahepatic cholestasis?
Can it be just a benign biliary stricture? You discussed malignancy. What about
Yes, ma'am.
biliary stricture?
Extrahepatic benign, ma'am. There is significant history of alcohol intake, ma'am. If the patient has developed chronic pancreatitis related distal CBD stricture, ma'am.
Yeah, that's possible.
If patient has developed chronic pancreatitis
Pain.
and has now come with a distal CBD structure,
Distal CBD stricture.
he would have had a lot of other symptoms of chronic pancreatitis.
Yes, sir.
He would have presented with recurrent pain. He would have presented with steatorrhea, much, all these symptoms before that. So the chronic pancreatitis to produce obstructive jaundice has to be a very severe fibrosing pancreatitis. Isn't it? At this point of time, nobody will come without pain. He would have come to you, he would have presented with some pain for 2 years, then would have come with jaundice. Am I right?
Jaundice.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Then IgG4 related disease, sir.
IgG4, okay? Yeah. Possible. Intrahepatic? Any causes you would like to consider?
Intrahepatic, ma'am, patient has taken complementary alternative medicine, ma'am.
Yeah, but
First,
that's
I would like to.
jaundice, no? That's not
Yeah, it could be drug-induced liver injury going on an alcohol liver disease. It could be a viral hepatitis on an alcohol liver disease. It could have been a Hep B or HIV. It can be HCV on an alcohol liver disease. HCV can produce bile duct injury, can produce cholestasis.
Cholestasis, yes.
It could just be alcoholic cirrhosis going on with some cholestasis. But only thing is, if he has taken significant alcohol for 25 years, got an underlying alcohol liver disease,
Without
the
decompensation.
point is it have decompensated.
Decompensated.
But still, we'll keep in mind, we cannot rule out this. Okay?
Yes, sir.
He could have developed a prolonged cholestasis either due to a viral, due to a drug, but with an underlying alcohol liver disease, which may not be very active. So, this is how you.
LPK, should we
Yes.
consider IgG4 and those?
IgG4, yes, we could probably think of, but it will be last in the diagnosis. Nobody comes with IgG. You look at IgG4 disease people, they are all well preserved. They won't weight loss of nearly 20, 25, 4 months. They won't. They are well preserved. They eat well. They are well preserved. They come much earlier to you. Okay. We keep it in mind. That will be the last thing we think. But they are all very well preserved. Whichever IgG4 disease we have made a diagnosis, they are all well preserved because they come much earlier.
Autoimmune pancreatitis?
That's a possibility. Both autoimmune pancreatitis and this thing are possible. The only way we can explain that, because when people become jaundice, they severely cripple their intake. So that could be causing the weight loss.
Weight loss, yes.
Weight loss.
I think you have to keep cause details, no? Autoimmune and IgG4 as well.
IgG4.
And just move on. Okay, so on next slide.
On examination, patient is moderately built, nourished, BMI of 21 kg, icteric on examination, no pallor, edema or lymphadenopathy. Vitals examination, heart rate of 96 beats per minute, regular good volume, blood pressure of 120/70 in right arm supine position, temperature 99.7, JVP normal.
What are the other things you look for in general examination?
Scratch marks, ma'am.
Intense pruritus. Yes.
It is pruritus patient with a scratch mark.
Pruritus, so you look for scratch marks.
Then features of any chronic liver disease, ma'am. Since the patient has significant history of alcohol intake for 20-25 years, ma'am.
Yeah.
Features of chronic liver disease.
So good. Yeah. And then what is lymph nodes? No? What are the lymph nodes you examine?
They're just doing the class. I'll finish it.
Supraclavicular lymph node, ma'am.
Supraclavicular is
Yes, ma'am. Axillary lymph node, supraclavicular lymph nodes.
axillary lymph node. Irish lymph
Yes,
node.
ma'am.
Axillary nodes, so they think, because when we thought of a nodal obstruction, we thought of a lymphoma. So you need to look at axillary nodes, you need to look at supraclavicular nodes,
Supraclavicular node.
And
inguinal nodes.
Yes, yes.
All those things we think
what are the other cutaneous markers you look for?
in a malignancy.
Pancreatic malignancy?
Paniculitis, ma'am.
Pancreatitis. What will you
Other internal markers of malignancy, you tell me.
We can have paraneoplastic cutaneous manifestation in the form of
Internal signs of malignancy. Acanthosis nigricans,
acanthosis
sign of
nigricans,
Lesotral, Sister Joseph nodule. Isn't it? Virtuoso node.
Blemish nodes,
migrating thrombophlebitis?
Migrating
Trocheus sign.
Nauseous sign.
These are the things that we look for, okay? I just realized, can it be hemochromatosis with HCC? As I was just thinking about that. What is the presentation? 49-year-old lady, can it be hemochromatosis with HCC?
And the age group will fit, ma'am. For hemochromatosis.
What is it, man?
Hemochromatosis with HCC.
He's a diabetic, so
What will be the presentation of hemochromatosis with HCC? Not uncommon, yeah, we do see in all the tertiary
We do
reference,
see.
yeah, tertiary reference centers, you do get these cases.
Now, hemochromatosis, the age group will fit, ma'am.
Yeah.
They can present in after 30s, ma'am.
Yeah, they have bronze diabetes, there'll be hyperpigmentation.
Bronze diabetes patient, yes, ma'am.
Hyperpigmentation, they're predisposed to HCC, so you can get an HCC.
Yes,
They can have cirrhosis.
You can get liver
cirrhosis
cirrhosis.
with HCC potential.
So please read about hemochromatosis. Don't just dismiss it, okay? Primary and secondary, both. Okay, so
Okay.
for that general examination will give you a clue as to whether you're dealing with hemochromatosis or not. Okay? So
Yes.
next slide. Next slide.
Per-abdomen examination on inspection, the umbilicus is central, not dilated, veins or scar. Hernial orifice is normal. Corresponding quadrants move equally with respiration. On palpation, there is no guarding or rigidity. Liver is palpable 3 centimeters below the costal margin in midclavicular loin. Soft in consistency, smooth surface, round margin. Percussion liver span of 14 centimeter in midclavicular line.
1 minute.
Oscar,
What is missing?
What is missing?
sir, whether any tenderness is there on hepatic tenderness, sir,
The thing which is not missing.
What is
and
the
hepatic jugular reflux.
No.
EHBO?
Doctor, you have said you said there's an extra hepatic biliary obstruction. Okay. What is the thing you look for when you are palpating? And what is clarity missing there? Huh?
Gallbladder, palpable gallbladder,
You have to say whether the gallbladder is palpable or not.
palpable or not.
Is it palpable or not palpable?
Presenting
Gallbladder was not palpable, sir.
Was not palpable?
No, sir.
Sure. Liver span was 14.
Yeah.
Okay. You think there's no palpable gallbladder?
Gallbladder.
Then
Should you look
what
for
else is missing?
What else is missing?
Is there a free
spleen,
fluid in the abdomen or not?
spleen, fluid,
Yeah, spleen,
In
you
the
have got
abdomen.
mentioned. Extrahepatic biliary obstruction, when can you get spleen? When you have associated splenic or portal vein thrombosis, isn't it?
Yeah, pancreatic
You can
malignancy,
get it. When you have chronic pancreatitis because alcoholic, you can get this one.
minor cholangiocarcinoma,
Yeah. Cholangiocarcinomas, you can get splenic vein thrombosis.
HCC.
You need to look for, one is the spleen, the other thing is you have to look for a free fluid, isn't it? In the abdomen.
free fluid. Yes, sir.
So you've got to mention there's no free fluid thing.
There is no free fluid, no spleen palpable, no gallbladder palpable. We have to mention.
Okay, next slide. Next
For
slide.
examination. Other system examination, respiratory system, trachea central,
Okay, so
normal.
next slide.
Normal CNS examination.
So now what are the different?
So clinical findings, there's only the liver is palpable, is ectric.
Yes, sir.
I believe there are no signs of any,
Cell failure.
another thing, internal malignancy. Only liver is palpable, there's no spleen, no spleen, and gallbladder is not palpable.
Not palpable.
They said gallbladder is not palpable. Now, what is your diagnosis?
Liver was how many centimeters?
14 centimeters.
14 centimeters.
Total 14. No, below the costal margin, how many centimeters? 5.
3
3 centimeters.
3, yeah?
Yeah, ma'am. 3 centimeters below the costal.
Okay.
So doctor, what's your diagnosis now?
So he has got jaundice, he's got hepatomegaly, he has no gallbladder palpable, he has no spleen, there is no ascites.
Myositis. And the liver
Cirrhosis of liver we can rule out.
Liver is palpable, yeah.
What are the possibilities? Just continue with the discussion.
So here is we said two things. One is EHBO, extrahepatic biliary obstruction.
Biliary
So
obstruction.
you need to tell, and we thought it's malignant.
Yes, sir.
So in the presence, with the absence of gallbladder, what are the possibilities of extrahepatic biliary obstruction?
Cholangiocarcinoma, sir.
Where?
Proximal to the cystic duct, sir.
Hilar cholangiocarcinoma.
Yeah.
Hilar cholangiocarcinoma.
Number two.
Just tell what are Renault is gallbladder not palpable in extrahepatic biliary obstruction is your differential. That's all. That's your differential. Renault is gallbladder not palpable in EHBO. It's not 100%, no. What percentage of ampullary carcinoma will gallbladder be palpable?
What percentage of?
Patients with ampullary carcinoma will have a palpable gallbladder. Is it 100%?
No.
So what percentage? So in pancreatic cancer, it's about 30%, in ampullary, it's about 70%. Okay, so still gallbladder may not be palpable. That's number
May not be
two.
palpable.
Number three is if the gallbladder is under the gallbladder fossa and you may not be able to palpate the gallbladder again. Okay, that is number three. If it is associated with gallstone disease, you have a contracted gallbladder.
Yeah, associated gallstone.
Will not be palpable. And if there's a double duct obstruction, there's an obstruction at the porta and nodal obstruction at the cystic duct, again gallbladder will not be palpable. And the last is post-cholecystectomy stage. So you must have all these on your fingertips. So even though the history is more directed towards extrahepatic biliary obstruction, the question is, on examination, gallbladder is not palpable, so you must know when is gallbladder not palpable in extrahepatic biliary obstruction.
Biliary obstruction.
So still it is possible. Hilar cholangioma will not be palpable, you said, that's right. Then ampullary carcinoma, 30% not palpable. In carcinoma in the pancreas, again, there's quite a large percentage not palpable. And if the person has got secondaries at the porta, again, gallbladder may not be palpable. Okay, but still it is extrahepatic biliary obstruction.
Still extrahepatic, yes, ma'am.
Okay, now can it be intrahepatic cholestasis? Or now can the whole thing may not be extrahepatic at all because liver is just 3 centimeters below fossa margin. Spleen is not palpable, no fluid can be intrahepatic cholestasis. And if it is intrahepatic, what are the possibilities?
And still we can treat the drug-induced liver injury as one of the possibilities.
These are the situations when hemochromatosis and all these conditions will come as your DD. You know, these are the conditions when you consider all other cholestatic. As Sir said, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and the patient is not decompensated, but any of these cholestatic is only 4 months. So it could still be one of these cholestatic due to the viruses, it could be some of the infections, all of them can present. What is unlikely or less likely is a cirrhotic liver because it does not have features, there's no splenomegaly, no veins. Yeah. So you have to consider all these other causes of cholestasis, which would include viral hepatitis, number 1, drug-induced would be number 2, and then autoimmune hepatitis, very uncommon, unusual, and not so common, but still you have to keep that, hemochromatosis. These are some of the things that should cross your mind because they can present with pruritus, whenever there's a cholestatic feature or intrahepatic. Okay, the point, one thing in the history we didn't have waxing and waning, so the waxing and waning shifts the diagnosis towards more of extrahepatic.
Extrahepatic.
That's the only thing. Okay. LVK, can we move on?
Yes, yeah, madam.
So how will you investigate, doctor? What are the two important investigations? You had two differentials. You're still not certain intrahepatic or extrahepatic. So what are the two important differentials?
Ultrasound abdomen, ma'am.
Ultrasound. What are you? Just keep telling what you look for and then.
Ultrasound abdomen, we will start from the liver, ma'am. Any intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation. Since the patient is alcoholic, we will also try to look for surface of the liver as well as the echogenicity of the liver.
Yeah.
Extrahepatic biliary portal lymph nodes.
Then you have the Doppler to see the portal venous system.
Portal venous flow, ma'am.
Thrombosis, yeah.
Yeah. And what are the 2 or 3 signs you look for in biliary obstruction?
I'll call it.
Pancreas, I'm having of pancreas.
So what are the signs you look for on ultrasound? You get what's called as double duct sign.
Double dot sign, ma'am.
You get what's called as double barrel sign. That's the gun
Yes.
barrel, where the CBD is as dilated as the portal vein.
Or the portal vein, yes,
And
ma'am.
then you get the cigar butt sign. So 3 signs that you look for. on
I'll call
ultrasound.
it in the class.
And always switch on the Doppler to look for any portal venous thrombosis.
Portal venous thrombosis.
You can almost change the disease. You do that. What about the liver function test, liver biochemistry? What are you looking for? What do you expect in this patient? What will be the
I would
serum?
look,
You think?
What do you
SGOT,
expect the bilirubin to be? What do you expect the enzymes to
serum
be?
albumin. Sorry, sir?
What do you expect the bilirubin to be? What do you expect the liver? If it's extrahepatic biliary upstream, what do you expect the liver enzymes to be?
I expect bilirubin to be more of direct hyperbilirubinemia with raised ALP and raised GGTP. Mild, with some mild elevation of SGOT, SGPT.
Which one rises first? Alpha gamma GT or transaminases?
In obstructive, we will have ALP and GGTP rising first.
It is usually the SGPT that rises and then starts the alpha and gamma GT. So this is the other wider question that's often asked, okay? So these are the two things that you will ask first. Then further beyond that, then you start investigating. Can I have the next slide? Yeah.
Hemoglobin 13.1 and total count of 7,200. Creatinine is raised 1.62. Total bilirubin of 3.5 with a direct component of 3.17. Albumin is normal. SGPT 108, which is about 3 times raised. GGTP is 1,124 and is significantly elevated ALP and GGTP.
Why is GGT so much elevated?
Because of the underlying history of alcohol intake also, sir.
Correct. Probably is actively drinking, so gamma GT is gone up.
Yes.
And you can say the alkaline phosphate is disproportionately elevated to liver enzymes.
Liver enzymes
Bilirubin is also, direct bilirubin is elevated.
elevated.
How would you know from this report whether the gamma GT is due to alcohol or not alcohol? Something is missing in this slide. That may give you a clue. That may give you a clue. That
Something is not there, so you
it's
got to
not
ask.
there. Yeah.
Mean corpuscular volume, ma'am.
Yeah,
Good.
MCV, good.
MCV. MCV is elevated, then you can almost consider the possibility that it's an ongoing drink. Good. Next slide. So the possibility is that the patient has got, okay, now continue reading.
Obstructive jaundice.
So PTI.
INR PT is raised 16.3, control they have not given. INR is 1.49, lipase of 244, alkaline alpha fetoprotein of 2.92, CA 19.9, 312.95, and urine routine is normal.
Urine routine cannot be normal. Bipigment will be positive anyway.
Bipigment will be positive.
So CA 99 is elevated.
It's about 3 times elevated, sir.
It's more than that, no? Normal CA
More than
99 is,
that. More than
It's almost 10
normal
times.
CA 99 is how much?
Almost 10 times.
that.
Up to
37.
Up to 100, sir.
33.
37.
37 is our normal CA 99. When do you suspect malignancy? When it's more than 200. When it's more than 400, it's probable. More than 1000, it's confirmatory.
Definitely.
So CA 99 is elevated. What is the possibilities?
Pancreatic biliary tumor, sir. It can be elevated both in
In the
cholangiocarcinoma
cholangiocarcinoma as well as pancreatic
as well as pancreatic carcinoma. Both,
malignancy.
sir.
Where else, in non-malignant, where does it get elevated?
Even in cholangitis, you can get
You get in
cholangitis, you
acute
can get
cholangitis, you can get in CBD stone disease, you
CVD
can
stone
get in,
disease also we will get.
you can get in acute pancreatitis,
Inflammation and infection.
inflammation, infection, you can get CA9, can be elevated. Okay?
Yes.
So what's your interpretation now? What should be your next investigation choice?
affected protein. We'll do a baseline ultrasound, ma'am.
Yeah,
Before
ultrasound.
going with any advanced investigation like CT scan or MRC.
Generally finish out the viral markers,
Viral
Hep
marker.
B, Hep C and HIV, and then you
HIV.
go for an imaging,
Imaging.
ultrasound. Yes.
I don't think they have an ultrasound. Next slide. I think, okay, next slide. So, ultrasound is done. So just read that.
Ultrasound done. Significant ectasia of the common bile duct with intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation.
What is
Rule
that?
out intraductally biliary mass bar calculus and dilated vein.
Main pancreatic duct.
What happened to the gallbladder? Anything in the gallbladder by ultrasound?
No, sir, gallbladder was not commented in the ultrasound, sir.
There was no comment on it, is it?
There were no-
Yeah, sir, obscured.
So there is, so there's significant case of CBD, we don't, with a dilated main pancreatic, isn't it?
It's quite clear, no? So, Bhavin, what's your diagnosis?
Very
We have a
accurate.
dilated CBD, we have a
Both
dilated.
dilated, both CBD as well as double duct sign.
Double duct, yeah, exactly.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
sign,
This will be double duct sign.
What's your diagnosis?
What's your diagnosis?
Periampullary carcinoma involving the distal CBD.
Periampullary carcinoma,
Periampullary carcinoma.
okay.
What's the
Ampullary
difference?
malignancy, second.
What's the difference between ampullary and periampullary? Ampullary is ampulla, periampullary is
Ampulla,
within point.
Periampullary.
what are the other regions of periampullary region?
What constitutes periampullary? Yeah.
Second part of the duodenum around the ampulla, distal pancreatic duct.
Pancreas, this pancreatic head,
Sorry,
distal
head of
CBD.
pancreas, distal
Second part of the
CBD,
duodenum
and
and
ampulla of blood ducts.
Yeah, so you have a malignant ampulla, it's ampullary malignancy. You can get obstruction due to a duodenal malignancy. You can get a distal cholangio, you can get it for the head of pancreas.
Head of pancreas.
Okay,
Yes.
I think it is within 0.5 centimeters, if I'm not, or is it 1
within
centimeter?
5 centimeters.
Within 5 centimeters.
Yes.
So next, what should you do now? Next,
I would like to go ahead and do a CT abdomen.
you want to do an endoscopy or you want to go for a...
You think you should do an endoscopy and then do a side viewing scopy?
Yes, sir. We can do that.
Have they done
You can
it?
take biopsy. You can do biopsy also, sir. Yes, sir.
What are the things that you can do in the endoscopic procedure in this
So
patient?
next what can you do on this?
What are the things you can
So you want to do an endoscopy on this patient. What are things you want to look for?
As you're passing the scope, what are,
As you're passing through from, say, from the post-cricoid region, what do you want to see
what are the things you're looking for?
in this patient? Extrahepatic biliary obstruction.
Remember the alcohol, remember. Yeah, your mind should start working when a question like
Got
this
alcohol, he's been taking alcohol, so you
Yeah.
might have underlying chronic liver disease.
is.
Or you might have a portal hypertension due to EHBV, isn't it?
HPV, yes.
Portal hypertension EGVO can be due to a portal vein thrombosis, or it can be a secondary biliary cirrhosis.
Secondary.
So you need to look for varices. As you go to the stomach, you look for portal gastropathy.
Postal gastropathy, fundal
Supposing you
varices.
find varices, and if he has got some mass lesion, what is the implication? Supposing this man has got a periampullary malignancy, so then you can go into the second part of the rear to see if there's any, if the ampulla is normal or not. This is what you're going
Normal
to
or
do.
bulky ampulla.
Bulky ampulla, or has it got a growth? Or is it intraampullary malignancy? Is a bulky ampulla you're going to see in this patient? Or his ampulla is normal? Only three things can happen. You can get bulky ampulla, you can get an ampullary growth, you can get a normal ampulla. Supposing this man has got, say, varices and portal gastropathy, and he's got a periampullary malignancy. What is the implication?
What's the implication?
what is the implication of having a varix or varices or a portal gastropathy with a periampullary malignancy in this patient?
Chronic portal vein thrombosis.
No, I'm not telling about secondary. What will be the implication? You always understand implication. That means
Involvement of the
if you
portal.
want to
Involvement of
operate,
the.
wait. If you
Involvement
want
of the
to
portal
operate
vein.
on this patient,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
what will happen to the liver post-operatively? He's got a portal hypertension. So what can you
There is
expect
an
from the liver?
If there is an involvement of the portal vein, sir, in the form of portal vein thrombosis or
I'm
extension.
not talking about portal vein thrombus or anything. Say he's got an underlying alcohol liver disease and periampullary. Now you are putting it, there is a varix, there is a portal gastropathy. And the
Hepatic
surgeon
reserve,
wants to
sir.
resect. He takes your
Hepatic
opinion.
reserve will be less, sir. Decompensation. Hepatic reserve will be less.
So you can expect decompensation post-operatively.
Decompensation.
You can develop, if this man has no decompensation now, but if he's got underlying disease, you can expect post-operative liver cell failure. Isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Ah.
The other thing is ampullary look for fish mouth, no?
And you can look for it.
Look,
You can look for it. If you have an ampullary malignancy, you can take biopsies.
you can take
Yes, sir.
biopsies.
So have they done an endoscopy on this?
Yeah, sir. Next slide.
Next slide. Anyway, they had an MRCP done ahead of that. So we have that picture.
Yeah.
You can just comment on this.
Significantly dilated common by CBD with dilatation of the central intrahepatic biliary radical dilatation.
The CBD is dilated right up to the end.
Right up to the end, there is narrowing at the.
What is happening there?
Tapering, sir. Tapering at the tip.
Taper, there is an abrupt cutoff there. There is an abrupt cutoff at the lower end.
Lower end, sir.
Yeah, this is what a cigar butt sign, you know. It gets
There is an abrupt cutoff. And where is the pancreatic duct? Do you have any other MRI picture showing a double duct dilatation, doctor?
I don't think so. I don't think they have it in a picture.
Pancreatic duct, I'm not able to visualize.
They just had this picture.
Okay. We don't see a good pancreatic duct in this. Okay, there's an abrupt cutoff here. We don't see a pancreatic duct dilatation here.
Yes, sir.
This
So still be periampullary or a. Obviously, we are not in the coronal section. We are not seen any head in the mass in the head of pancreas. So pancreas
yes,
is
sir.
pretty okay. So abrupt cutoff in the lower end. If there is no pancreatic duct dilatation, it may be a distal cholangio. Or if there is a ductal dilation, it becomes a periampullary.
Yeah.
Okay. You said IgG4 disease, no? One of the differences you said is IgG4. Can this be an IgG4 disease?
IgG4 disease, they will have long strictures, sir.
What is the most important thing in IgG4 disease? How will this thing, can this be, no, one of the differential diagnosis is IgG4. Can this be an IgG4 disease? Why do you say this is not
IgG4
IgG4 disease?
IgG4 disease, if it is involving the pancreatic duct or the biliary duct, sir, there will be long
Here you don't
strictures.
see the pancreatic duct at all. In IgG4 disease, what will be the pancreatic duct? Will it be dilated or what will happen? What is the description of pancreatic in IgG4 disease?
Narrowing, sir.
They are narrow ducts with multiple
Narrow
strictures.
ducts. Multiple
What will happen to the bile duct? What is the point in bile duct? It's an IgG4 disease. No, first you will see abnormal thickening of the bile ducts, both in the CBD as well as in the IHBR. Number two, as you said, they may have multiple strictures. It comes like a closing cholangitis, like.
Crystallizing cholangitis, yes, sir.
All this you should tell, no?
Yes, sir.
Huh? Because you said this is IgG4 disease. My question will be, can it be an IgG4 disease? So this completely rules out IgG4. This is a uniform
IgG4 related disease.
with an abrupt cutoff.
Supposing this MRCP alone was kept, can it be choledochal cyst?
Yeah.
Yes.
If it is choledochal cyst, what type?
What type is it?
Type 1.
Type 1 now.
Type 4.
Yeah, type 4.
Type 4.
Type 4.
Intrahepatic
Type
connection.
4.
Okay, I presume there is no, apparently we don't see any dilated pancreas. Can we go to the next slide?
Next slide.
I'll read the report now. Polypoidal appearing growth noted in the distal CBD, extending to periampullary region, mass projecting into the duodenum, suggestive of distal CBD neoplasm, marked biliary dilatation, CBD measuring 2 centimeters with moderate intrahepatic biliary dilatation, gallbladder markedly distended and shows sludge within, no calculi, wall thickening, no focal liver lesion.
That's what I said. This could be distal cholangio because you have not seen a good pancreatic duct. I can show you this thing. So this could be a distal cholangio. That's what I'm little surprised that none of you were able to palpate the gallbladder.
Yeah, they may not have.
You have easily palpate. Such a big thing you'll able to palpate. That means you got to train yourself to palpate the gallbladder. You need to palpate deep, right upper quadrant, ask the patient to take a deep breath. 3-4 times you do it and then you'll feel the feeling. Unless you know how to palpate the gallbladder, then you will miss the gallbladder.
And always do a
Some
Middleton.
examiners are very, very particular about it. Until you
You do what's called as a Middleton test. You know, you hook your finger under the liver and then go to the right side and hook your finger and ask the patient to breathe.
hook your fingers and then ask it, then you'll always palpate it.
The fundus of the gallbladder invariably comes and touches your hand. It's quite simple and it is a good test. If you miss the gallbladder, that's the end of the case. You know? So it's very important. In a patient like this, I would have expected a gallbladder.
So this could be distal cholangioCA, okay?
Next slide.
If they do an endoscopy,
Next slide. You have an endoscopy.
most important thing is,
Doctor, you can just tell the finding that was seen on endoscopy.
Now it was a bulky ampulla was seen in the side view scoping, and multiple biopsies was taken from the ampulla and then for histopathology.
why was ERCP done?
Why was ERCP done? Yeah, that's-
See, one other thing we did not get the information from the MRI is, was the hepatic artery normal? Was a portal vein encasement was there? Was there a superior masseteric artery involvement or not? I presume it is not involved.
It was
And
not
you have some bulky ampulla here, but I don't think this looks like a periampullary. And but why I would not have gone on for ERCP if the MRI has not shown nodes. Number one. Number two, if there is no vascular invasion, this is a distal cholangio. Patient is well preserved. If there are no nodes, no ascites, no mets in the thing. So what we could have done is we could have done a PET scan,
PET CT directly?
PET CT directly.
Yes, sir.
No, after MRI and see there's no distant metastasis. And we could have straight away resected this patient because the bilirubin is only 4.
Only for
You don't require a preoperative stenting on this patient.
stenting to.
So why was ERCP done, doctor?
Sir, actually MRCP was done after this side view scopy and ERCP. ERCP we thought of doing a breast cytology, sir.
Brush cytology. I think what we could have done is, the yield of the brush cytology could have been is very, very low. What will be the yield of brush cytology?
30%.
30%.
So if at all you needed anything, you should have done a spyglass and then. But here there is a polypoidal mass by the MRCP. Your CA99 is elevated. And you've got come with that extreme androxia elevating. So most probably, if at all you are not a diagnosis, you should run a spyglass and then taken a biopsy. Right? I think this patient could have gone on for resection straight away. And there is no evidence of any, I presume there's no nodes, there is no peritoneal mets, no liver mets, and no vascular invasion. And there's no ascites. This information is recorded in the MRI, MRCP.
No, sir, MRCP was done after this, sir. The slides actually.
So did you put a stent on this after opacifying the bile duct?
Yes, sir, stent was temporarily put, sir.
So the problem, what do you think the problem will be having a stent here in this patient when you don't require a stent?
Infection.
Yeah.
Infection, sir.
One infection, post-operative infection is much higher when you have stented. You stent the patient if you think the patient is not immediately fit for surgery, or if you think the bilirubin, some surgeons would like to have a bilirubin less than 10
Less than 5.
before this one. But his bilirubin is only 3.4. So we would have gone on straight away, gone for a Whipple's in this patient. We would not have done an ERC. And I'm sure this biopsy will be negative. It doesn't look like a periampulary.
So
What we are taking is it was possibly a distal cholangioCA. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Next slide.
Side view copy. Bulky and edematous ampulla with normal overlying mucosa. Proximal CBD and intrahepatic biliary radical dilated with abrupt cutoff from mid CBD. Impression, bile duct SOL, query cholangiocarcinoma.
One minute, doctor. The mid CBD is little unlikely, no? Because we could trace the entire CBD.
Entire
Yes,
CBD,
ma'am.
not mid CBD. It will be the lower CBD.
The lower CBD.
And this could still be a cholangio or a distal cholangiocarcinoma. And here, the biopsies from that periampullary region I don't think it will give you any clue. That mucosa looks pretty normal, so it will be negative for biopsy.
Welcome, next slide.
In case you want to be so very particular about the biopsy see, that's what will come. When you do a biopsy like this, it will come as high-grade dysplasia. It does not show malignancy. That sort of ampulla will not show. If you are really keen on that, you can do two things. You do a sphincterotomy.
1 minute.
Sphincterotomy and biopsy.
NBK, wait. Ask. How would you manage now? Just tell the management now. High-grade dysplasia.
No, because there was this is a polypoidal lesion in the distal CBD. I don't think your ampullary biopsy will go. So how do you manage it? Or how will you prove the diagnosis in this? This is not very ampullary.
During the ERCP itself, we can take a breast cytology, sir.
Again, told you the breast cytology is only 30%. Now in 2021, what can you do on this patient if you want to take a biopsy and prove it?
Along with the breast cytology, we can do a sphincterotomy and take a direct biopsy.
Again, distal CBD mass. So one is sphincterotomy. Sphincterotomy, you can take only ampullary biopsies. If you distal CBD, what else can you do now in 2021?
Cholangioscopy, sir.
Spyglass cholangioscopy and biopsy.
Spyglass cholangioscopy and biopsy, sir. Direct vision, we can see the lesion as well as we can take the biopsy, sir.
LBK, in a distal cholangio, is it possible to anchor the spyglass when you're passing it?
What you do is you go above, pass the biopsy forceps.
Okay.
As you are coming down, withdrawing, you have to put it and take it.
Okay.
That's what you do. You go beyond that, open the biopsy forceps and above and bring it out. But I don't think I would have really gone on because it looks very much like a polypoid lesion here. And endoscopic, the other possibility is you can done an endoscopic ultrasound and look at that mass.
That's what I thought, yeah.
And probably you could have done a biopsy. And from that also you could have taken a biopsy. I don't want to, when this patient is imminently operable, we don't want to contaminate the bile. So I think we would have probably, this looks more like a distal, the way is presented, it looks more like a distal cholangioCA.
Cholangiocarcinoma.
You would have got either we have done endoscopic ultrasound and taken a biopsy, or we have gone for a Whipple's surgery.
Whipple surgery.
When all would you consider what do you call that papillectomy? What are the indications?
Ampulectomy.
Ampulectomy. What are the indications for ampulectomy?
No, you do ampulectomy where? You do ampulectomy only for a patient who's got a periampullary lesion. The periampullary lesion can either be an adenoma or a malignancy. Any adenoma, if it is not, if there is no invasion into the bile duct, you can do an ampullary adenoma. But if it's invading into the bile duct to more than 1.52 centimeters, you don't do ampullary.
Go straight for Whipple's.
Malignancies, you can do it provided the patient is not fit for any procedure. Say somebody advanced cardiac failure, you can't do it.
He's
You can do it.
He's got HOCM also. Diabetic, hypertensive, HOCM. So I think those are the situations.
Risk factors.
Should you screen the colon?
Before surgery, the things you need to look for is there a distant metastasis? Is there a vascular invasion? Is there a liver mets? Is there a peritoneal mets? Is there a malignant ascites? And is there a portal hypertension?
Portal hypertension.
These things you need to see because all this will all impact your surgical output.
And would you like to screen the colon in this patient?
If it's a periampullary mass lesion.
What is the link? Colonic polyps and ampullary carcinoma?
Risk of adenoma is increased, ma'am, in periampullary carcinoma, ma'am.
Now you have an ampullary adenomas. You can also get colonic adenomas. Ampullary
Colonic
adenomas can be
adenomas,
a part of, supposing you have an ampullary adenoma in a 13-year-old
FAP.
child.
Familial,
Can be part of, not a part of Peutz-Jeghers syndrome.
Those genes.
huge syndrome.
Peutz-Jeghers syndrome.
And FAP. So I think next, I
Okay,
think
next slide.
the patient did undergo ripples, I think. So I think this is how they will.
I think this is surgery.
This is
Why
how-
do you think this is surgery?
This is how they will discuss surgery versus, because there's high grade dysplasia. Patient has got a high risk because of the HOCM, hypertension, diabetes.
Hypertension.
So we consider endotherapy versus a major surgery. So I think you need to get a fitness and it will be high risk.
You get a cardiac fitness, you get a pulmonological fitness,
Yeah.
and then you can go ahead and do a surgery on him. But he looks imminently operable because there's no vascular invasion, there are no mets. It is only a proliferation distal to the thing. So they've done a Whipple's on that. Did you get the post-operative biopsy on it?
What's the-
Yes, sir, we got it. It was a distal cholangiocarcinoma, sir.
It was distal cholangiocarcinoma. That's all you have, or do you want anything else in the biopsy?
Any further information we have?
Or what else you'll ask the pathologist for information? Now it's
Lymph
distal
node
cholangio.
involvement.
Huh?
Lymph node involvement.
Lymph node involved.
No, there were no lymph nodes at all. So they have done a lymph node. So what else will you look for? So this is a distal cholangio-CA. It's a small cholangio, it's a distal polypoid node, distal cholangio-CA. And in the pathology, there are no nodes. So in the pathology, what are the things you look for? Yeah, you look for a lymphovascular invasion. If you have a lymphovascular invasion, number one. Number two, is there an extension to the duodenal margin? Number three, are the margins on either side are free?
Free.
Yes, sir.
When you're doing a Whipple's, you need to know whether it's got the duodenal margin. Has it invaded the? Sometimes you'll have a micro invasion into the duodenum. So if the most the thing, or if there's a lymphovascular invasion. If you have a lymphovascular thing, you need to give this patient chemotherapy.
Adjuvant chemotherapy.
Therapy has to be given. So when you go and ask a pathologist, you need to look for lymphovascular shunning, involvement of the duodenal margin. You'll find the tumor is there, but in the tumor, when in a Whipple's thing, you'll have this. Okay. We had a lady who had 9 into 7 millimeters distal cholangio-CA. But the biopsy showed duodenal invasion as well as things. So in the tumor board we discussed, they said you need to give chemotherapy. This is important. You should know what you want to ask from the pathologist.
There was no lymphovascular invasion and margins were clear, sir.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And the duodenal margin. You should always ask for duodenal.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes you need to sit with the pathologist, and when you regularly do the tumor board meetings, this is what it comes up. And all the pathologists also come, and then you see it again very carefully, because if you're not going to give chemo for this patient, remember cholangio-CA is not a good tumor. It's not a good tumor. It may be a slow growing tumor, but it's not a good tumor. So it can recur very fast. So you need to do chemotherapy on this patient.
So what are the learning points, take-home points? Take-home points would be...
Take home, I think first important thing is history in this patient should be much more this one. So you also, and there are certain situations where you cannot rule out extrahepatic reduction in intrahepatic cholestasis. You should also keep in mind in intrahepatic cholestasis whenever you are talking about EHBV. And in this patient had alcohol liver disease, so you should know completely all the, where do you, statistically, you should know which is the most common EHBV in our country. It is generally carcinoma of pancreas, CHGB, and then periamptary. That way. And all of you should know how to palpate a gallbladder. And the important thing is you should know how do you manage these patients. And you should know which one you are going to do endoscopy, ERCP. Every obstructive jaundice does not require ER. You think it's operable, you should never do it. And what are the features of operability in a radiology imaging you should do? MRI, if you ask for MRI, you should ask for MR with a vascular, look for vascular involved. Or you should do a good CT. Good CT, because that will show you a good vascular involvement.
Vascular involvement.
And read about the chemotherapy for cholangio-CA. There are some people use chemotherapy with monoclonal antibodies.
And brachytherapy, all the other
The
cases.
brachytherapy, learn about intrahepatic cholangio-CA.
PDT, RFA,
And how
brachytherapy.
do you palliate these patients? How do you palliate? So we're not able to do surgery.
Yeah,
On this, how do you palliate these patients? Supposing it's irresectable, how do you palliate? When you palliate, as madam said, you can do you can do an RFA, irradiate the thing, you can do a
PDT,
photodynamic therapy, you can do laser ablation of the
Laser
tumor,
ablation.
you can do RFA of the tumor, all these things.
brachytherapy with yttrium.
Yttrium, yeah. Yttrium beads can be introduced and kept in there
Yeah,
through the stent.
through the stent. So these are some of the other things where that's why I asked for the endotherapy. You know, you should know all about this ampulectomy. We did have a patient who had just this, one PET CT that was just an ampulla, but still, it is always safer to do a Whipple's rather than hold on to an ampulectomy, and this is just a true adenoma. Okay? So we conclude this session. Thank you. Nice discussion, and you did quite well, Dr. Gordon. Good presentation. Thank you, Dr. For the
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll just see how it is next week. If they have cases, we take. Otherwise, we'll move 14 days, 2 weeks later. Okay, depending on the cases. All right. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
ma'am.
Next week, are we doing it? Or